Hello and welcome back to the channel. I am Jeremy at Brendle Concepts, and today I've got kind of a two-for-one special going on. So first off, we're going to talk about Project Rising Sun, the Supra, and next thing we're going to talk about is round rod. I said earlier, back a couple episodes ago, that whenever I had the chance to do some how-to videos that tied into the project I was going to. Fiberglass was probably the number one thing that people wanted to know about instantly. But the second thing that people wanted to know about was round rod. So I'm at a point now where I'm going to be adding round rod again to these panels, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But I'm also going to do a little demonstration on how I roll my round rod and how I actually figured out placement for my round rod on the Supra. So we'll get to all that a little bit. But first, let's just talk about this panel, because where I left off last time was basically separating the panels. Everything has been soaked with resin on the inside up to this point, just to solidify the inside of the foam, the outside of the foam, etc. What I've been doing basically the last week or so is working on the gaps. And what I actually did in the panel here was remove additional foam and round rod from my cut line in between the panels. And the reason I did that was so that I could build up this line here with fiberglass. I did it for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to add strength in this top ridge, or, like on the bottom of the hood or wherever, the split was. It was just foam. So it's, I showed pictures of what the foam looked like when it was cut. Not a lot of strength there. So I wanted to add a lot of strength into this portion. The other thing it's going to allow me to do is, now that I've defined these gaps, I can simply maintain them throughout the fabrication process and all the way out through the finishing stages. So now when I'm laying fiberglass, instead of having to come up and over this edge, if it was just foam like I originally cut it, I can now just go flat. So basically I don't have to, fold that fiberglass over this edge anymore. So it makes keeping this edge, really easy. When I fiberglass over this, I can just leave overhang and I can see exactly, where that fiberglass needs to be trimmed. So I spent a lot of time doing it right now, but in the end, it's going to save me a lot of time in the finishing stages. So that's kind of, why I did that. So now what I'm going to be doing next is more round rod. Now, right now you can see there's flexibility between, the base panel and the outside, panel here. And really what I want to do is just make sure that I get rid of this. So I'm going to be adding round rod in a couple different sections here. And the other reason that I have to do this is because these sections right here, these ports, I want these to be, like basically closed off, or an opening that's just actually a vent. So I'm going to need like a bottom floor here. I'm going to need like a roof in here. And I'm going to need to close off this section in here. Now, the sections of the body that have the parking sensors, they're going to be in here. So again, I'm going to have to make a trim panel that will cover this, and that'll be in the finishing stages. So basically what I'm going to be doing right now is adding more round rod to add, stability and strength so that these panels can't collapse. And then it's going to give me my defining points of where I have to make trim panels and leave openings. So that's basically, the next step of where I'm going with the Supra. Once I put my round rod in place, I'll be using the same foam, sections basically from here down. This will all be encased in foam. Down here in the bottom, this will be encased in foam. So that'll be after all the round rod. Then we'll get into, actually putting in the parking sensors, and then the internal lip here. And at that point, you know, we're going to be pretty close to, you know, fiberglass. So we're getting down the nitty gritty here, but that's pretty much where I'm at with the Supra. So now we're going to get into the round rod. So I'm just going to set this out of the way. Okay, so I had a lot of questions on my templates that I made for the mock-up. And what I did is made contoured shapes, you know, just rolled thinner round rod here to get a basic idea of what I wanted things to look like. I like doing it this way because, you know, when you have a piece of rod that comes down like over a fender, bumper, whatever, sorry, not bumper, like from your hood, whatever, you can see underneath, you know, if there's going to be a clearance issue, you know, can you get your hands into somewhere? Can you get to a nut or a bolt? I like doing it that way. Plus, it kind of gives me a visually, you know, I can see what the whole shape is going to be like. So that's kind of why I do my templates like this. And once I have the template, you know, where I want it, I save them. Now this one was labeled R3, which means this was for the rear of the car, and this was the third rod. So we'll actually go to the car now, and I'll show you R3, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Okay, looking at our panel here, this was R3. So now I'm just going to kind of put it here in place, and you can see, you know, yep, giant bear claw hands work every time. So you can see here, there's my length, you know, how the rod was rolled, you know, it fits right into place. And this is what I based this section off of. So now what we're going to do is actually go through the process of reproducing this piece. And then I can show you how I use this to mirror to the other side. So let's get to the round rod. All right, just to speed things up, I already had the rod pre-cut, but the first step I'm going to do is to deburr this rod. I like to sand the ends really flat and then put a nice little bevel on it. It helps getting the rod into the round roller or the rod roller much easier. So that's basically all I'm doing here. Okay, so now that we have deburred this round rod, we're going to go ahead and move on to making this R3. The first thing I'm going to do is just take my marker, and I am going to make a mark on the rod just like that, and that's just basically a center line representation. When you're having to feed this thing through the roller multiple times, it's really easy to kind of get it twisted, you know, so when it's rolling, if it's not the same every time, it'll come out kind of crooked. So I just like to make a little mark, and that's just, like I said, center line. Next thing I'm going to do is put it in my roller here, and this one I picked up, I believe, off of like Amazon. I've had a lot of these different rollers over the years. This one is Kaka. No shit. And it's not bad. I've had some ones that have, you know, kind of notches in the handle here to make it a little bit easier to kind of tell what you're doing. This one's just kind of basically a turn it and feel it. It's not a bad roller. It's not like top of the line by any stretch, but it works just fine for this. So the reason I like having these templates, like I said, is just basically I can visually reference this thing as I'm rolling it, and I can, you know, match them up as I'm going. For me, I just, you know, turn this thing until I feel tension. When I see the rod start to come up, you know I've got some tension on it. I like to use a pair of pliers just hold it. That way, as it's rolling through, it doesn't spin. You know, one thing I will say is on your cut length, some of these rollers, depending, well, basically every roller I've ever used, depending, is going to have a little bit on the end where that doesn't really get rolled the same as everything else. So when you're making your cut, you want to make sure that you're leaving excess rod so that you can, get the good portion that you need and not have like a little weird kink in it. This one I found, it seems to be about 3/4 of an inch that I need to add extra on either side, especially on like a really tight radius. So anyway, just a little food for thought. So, once I run it through once, I'm just gonna feed it through again. I can back it off a little bit, add more tension to it. You can go as much as you want, as little as you want, get a feel for the equipment, however you want to do it. And I'm just watching this center line as I roll through, and I'm holding it with my pliers here, making sure that that stays, straight the whole time. So here you go. You can see, like 2 real quick passes, not a whole lot of tension on it. And you can see that's how much we've made so far. That's what we're going for. So we're going to keep going. Now, once you get closer, or you think you're close, you can put it on there and go, yep, not even close. I think rolling round rod is kind of one of those things where it's like a feel. After you do it so many times, you just kind of know how much pressure you need to turn down on the dial to get it to where you want it. Especially as you get really close, it's just kind of like a fine adjustment. So we are really, really close. I mean, really close. So if I'm holding this like this, you can see I have just a little bit more, here. That's how much more we need to go. And there we are, we're pretty close. I mean, yeah, we're just going to run with this. All right. So this one doesn't really have, yeah, you can kind of see it. Right about here, I don't know if you can see it on camera. There we go. So right around here is where it starts to flatten out. It just didn't get that curve. So I can say like from here to here, we're going to cut off. And that's pretty much it. That's, we're just marking it, and that is where we'll cut it. All right, so we're back to R3 again. Yeah, it's still a little warmish, so I will handle it gently. And you can see here that that is what we made. So like I said, those little templates, you know, allowed me to duplicate these shapes over and over again. So now goes to the next question is, how do I transfer it, you know, from this side to that side? Well, on one side, I basically laid it out aesthetically where I liked them, where it made sense, you know, spanning panels, where I figured that I would have enough foam to support fiberglass, but it wasn't going to be so much that I was going to get a ton of sagging. You know, a lot of different factors went into where I decided I wanted these spines. But once I decided where I wanted them, you know, obviously I locked them all in. When I went to the other side, I was able to take measurements off of different points. And you can see like right here and right here, I took a measurement from basically the outside of this rod or spine to the outside of this rod or spine. And it just basically gave me grid points that I could plug in from side to side of the car. Now, when I want to actually talk about orientation, I need my marker. When we're talking about the orientation of the rod, what I did was basically held this rod over the one that I already had welded in and epoxied in place. I marked my center line here. And that basically, visually, when I put this on the other side, I know that this line has to be centered to me in order for it to be the same on this side. If it were to be twisted off to side or side, you know, I'd be able to see that. So I know that I want this mark to be facing towards me. So we'll go to the other side of the car now and we'll see what it looks like over there. Okay, we are on the other side of the car now, and what I wanted to show you is how I transferred this rod from side to side. So again, this is my R3 that I've identified earlier. And you can see how, again, we're sitting the same as on the other side. Now, again, I use this little mark here as an orientation for the rod to see if I'm twisted from side to side. Clearly I'm not. If I was, you know, this thing would be sitting differently. So from side to side, you know, I have the same curvature and I have the same trajectory line. Again, up here you can see my points that I took for measurement here to here. So that is the same on both sides of the car. On the bottom side, I basically did the same thing outside to outside and just plugged in my points. So that's basically what I did for every single one of these pieces of this round rod in order to mirror from side to side of the car. That's pretty much, you know, what it took for me to do all this. I hope this answered some questions for people, because there was a lot of people that wanted to know how I did this and more about it. So, you know, thanks again for everyone that's been watching and following along. I'm going to continue to keep trying to do more of these videos and keep everyone up to date. So until the next one, we will catch you next time. Thanks.